Am I the jerk for not inviting my grandmother to my graduation? First things first, not inviting her was not my initial intention. However, her actions have led me to this conclusion. I am a 22-year-old female graduating from trade school in July for medical assistance. I graduated high school in 2020, and due to the pandemic, I never had a formal graduation ceremony. Instead, we had a drive-in movie theater situation where we watched video recordings of ourselves walking across the stage to receive our diplomas. I just want this graduation to go as smoothly as possible so I don't have another terrible experience. When I turned 21, I decided to put myself through college and paid all my bills. I ended up going to Lincoln Tech with no help from anyone else. Here is where it gets complicated. When I left school in February to go on my internship so I could fully graduate, I received an email a couple of days prior informing me of when I could send in my cap and gown order and how much it would cost. It was about $37. I asked how many guests I could have and was told that it depended on how many people my classmates were bringing. I left it at that. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, it's now May, and I still haven't sent in my payment for my cap and gown. The limit of guests is now down to 3 people. My 27-year-old boyfriend was my first choice because he has been there for me through everything, helping me with studying and making sure I could get through everything I needed to. He is non-negotiable in this situation. My 62-year-old grandmother sees it as unfair that I chose him first over my family. My 33-year-old aunt and 37-year-old uncle are like my siblings, and I was going to invite them over my grandmother. My aunt, who I have been closer with than anyone else, sees my side in this situation and understands whatever I choose. My grandmother thinks I should invite my uncle and completely disregards my aunt in this situation. She feels entitled to an invite to my graduation. For a little context, my grandmother has always put me down throughout my childhood, giving me mental problems that I don't really want to disclose. I hold a certain grudge towards her. My uncle had no idea all of this was happening. My aunt tried speaking to my grandmother to explain my side of things because my grandmother never wants to hear my side or how I feel. From what I have heard from other family members and friends, my grandmother is acting irrationally. She even asked me if my boyfriend knew of the situation. After finding out he had all the information, she asked if he was going to step down so I could just spend it with my family. At this point, I don't even want my grandmother there. Can anyone give me some insight on what to do? You have a limited number of guests, so it's important to invite the people who supported you and genuinely want to celebrate this occasion with you. It sounds like Grandma is far down the list for an invite. Just tell her, I'm sorry the guest list is limited, and I want to invite my best friend, aunt and uncle, because they have given me a tremendous amount of support during my studies. I'm sorry if you're disappointed by my decision, but this is very important to me, and I hope you'll understand and be happy for me regardless. Am I the jerk if I tell my date he shouldn't have come into my job? So I, a 23-year-old non-binary person, work at a grocery store, and I went on a date with a 21-year-old man about a week and a half ago. We had talked about me maybe meeting him at a Renaissance fair, which is now tomorrow, as we finished that first date. We had a pretty nice time on the first date, but it was a little odd. He talked mostly about himself, and his roommate and their boyfriend showed up at the coffee shop we were at, in his words, to spy on us, which I found a bit uncomfortable. He seemed unfazed by it. Cut to tonight at my job where I was cashiering at the front of the store, and I suddenly see him coming through my line. I told myself that he probably just needed some groceries, and it was a coincidence, but he only had 2 items. My suspicions that he was there for me were confirmed when, in the middle of the transaction with the person in front of him, he said hi and started trying to talk to me. It was Friday night, we were slammed, and I was the only cashier. Not to mention that I was not finished speaking with the customer in front of him. I juggled the 2 conversations, and when I got to him, he started asking me if I was coming to the Renaissance Fair tomorrow or not, and how he thought he'd just come see if I was here. To add a bit more context, I admit I have been bad at replying to his messages the past week. I work full-time and have also been helping one of my best friends move and pack their apartment as they are moving states. However, I never promised to come to this Renaissance fair. I said I'd see if I could make it work. Another very important piece of this story is that, while I told him what grocery store I work at, I didn't tell him which one of them I was at, as there are multiple of that chain in my city. I don't know how he found my store. Back to tonight, I told him that I could try to meet him there in the afternoon, but I had a prior engagement that morning with a friend. He then asked me if I wanted to come over to his place after my 8-hour shift, 10 p.m., to watch a movie. He was saying all this in front of all my customers with a massive line, as I had him already checked out, preventing me from serving other customers. I also want to reiterate that I have been on one date with this guy and have never been to his apartment before. I told him, no, not tonight. I'm tired and have been moving boxes all week, and had to tell him twice before he left. He called, see you tomorrow, as he exited the store. I now feel a bit uncomfortable going to the fair tomorrow and kind of want to tell him no, but I feel a bit bad because he seemed genuinely nice on our date, if a bit odd and eager. I don't know what to do. Am I the asshole? You are not in the wrong here. This guy sounds creepy and weird. You've been out with him once, and he decided to show up at your workplace, distracting you during a busy period while you were serving someone else, trying to arrange a date. You'd be absolutely fine to tell him that his behavior made you uncomfortable, He is not welcome at your workplace and not to contact you again. Let your manager know about this guy as well in case he shows up again. Am I the jerk for having rules in my bedroom for my siblings when they play on the CS? For context, we moved this PS4 to my room and my 2 younger siblings spend the majority of the day in here. I do not have a problem with this at all. Usually I even watch them play games or play with them. Background noise does not bother me even if I am trying to sleep. As long as I am comfortable in my bed, it is all fine, even if they were not wearing headphones. There are only a few things that bother me a little, and I feel guilty because I am afraid I am imposing my contamination OCD on my siblings. They cannot lay on my bed to play if they had not showered that day. To be honest, I ignore this rule for the most part just for their comfort. They cannot lay their feet on the PS table unless they are wearing socks. They cannot sit on my bed or chair if they have been wearing their clothes outside to school or anywhere outdoors. For the showering rule, I have been trying to encourage them to wash their bedding more often, so I can be more comfortable with having them lay on my bed if they had not showered, and keeping their feet off my bed. My siblings are not dirty at all, and I acknowledge that. They take hygiene and sanitation seriously, and my mother and I often do not have to remind them to brush their teeth and wash their faces and hands. They may not wash their bedding often, but we are a busy family with loads of laundry almost every day multiple times a day, so they do not pay attention to washing their bedding very often. Still, I know they have good hygiene for children their age. But considering I have contamination OCD, I cannot see everybody else's hygiene and sanitation as enough, even if it is enough. I know they are children and children do not pay attention to things they are not told to do, but I cannot help but feel distressed when they come home from the mall and lounge around before changing their clothes. And if I do tell them to change, I cannot be sure that they will listen. Sometimes they do change their clothes, or sometimes they just get off my bed but sit on their gaming chairs instead. I do not want to impose my OCD on anyone, especially since I suffer day in and out with showering for hours, focusing on contamination and dirt, and crying over tiny details that nobody pays attention to. Am I the antagonist for having these rules? If the PlayStation is the family's and it was requested to be in the bedroom, then it's fair to expect some mess and activity in that space. Restrictions on the rest of the room are unreasonable since the request was made to have the console there. If it's solely owned or wasn't wanted in the room to begin with, then asking for personal boundaries to be respected is justified. Moving the PS4 back to a common area would solve many issues and prevent imposing personal conditions on others. Am I the jerk for calling my parent lazy and entitled? I recently graduated and my mom practically begged me to come home for the summer. I spent my undergraduate summers on campus for research or traveling, so I agreed. I quickly remembered why I stopped coming home. My mom likes to pretend she misses her kids when really all she misses is the free labor she can force us to do. I cannot have even a second of peace without being ordered to do something. The laundry, the dishes, cleaning the kitchen, the bathrooms, the dining room. It's always something. She is the biggest source of mess in the house. Everyone else cleans their plates after use. She just piles them in the sink and tells me or my siblings to do the dishes when it gets too full. The same thing happens with the kitchen. She will cook for herself, leave pots and spices out, make huge messes, and leave it for someone else to clean up. Meanwhile, all she ever does is sleep, party, eat, and make messes. I am not surprised, considering this is the same woman who has openly admitted that her primary purpose for having children was to have people to do the things she cannot be bothered to do. But I am not a maid, nor do I take kindly to being treated like one. It took less than a month for me to get sick of it. She told me to do her laundry. I announced right then and there that I would be moving to the city my Doctor of Medicine program is in much earlier than planned. I am willing to bet this woman has never done my or my siblings' laundry a day in her life, certainly not a day past infancy. If indentured servitude is a requirement for housing, I will find my own accommodations. She became very upset, telling me I could not go and that I was selfish for leaving because she works night shifts and needs help around the house. She is married. She can ask her husband or hire help. She acts like she has ever done anything other than the bare minimum of putting food on the table and clothes on my back. I told her to get off her lazy self and to do her own dirty work instead of bringing me in to clean up after her. Then I called her a user because she only ever speaks to me when she wants me to do something for her. The argument got heated and my dad broke it up. Neither of them is talking to me, and I have had 3 family members call to tell me how much of a selfish brat I am. My dad's opinion I do not really care about. He stopped daring to take my side a long time ago. But one of my aunts who called is usually pretty level-headed and impartial, despite being my mom's sister, and she ended up chewing me out pretty badly. Am I the antagonist for believing sucking on a woman's nipple after being forced to exist does not entitle her to free labor for the rest of my adult life? Nothing you've done here makes me think you are the jerk. It's best to leave and get the hell out of there as soon as possible. Your mother reacted poorly, and it sounds like part of this is about control for her. The way she's acting reminds me of the term emotionally immature. It's definitely not selfish to move out when you're not paying rent and they want chores. Am I the jerk for telling my friend to break up? I have a best friend who recently got together with a guy from our circle of acquaintances. I was shocked because this guy was someone our circle despised up until recently. He dated his cousin. He cheated on her. After they broke up, he harassed her. He stalked her and emotionally manipulated her. He also tried to gaslight our entire circle, claiming he was the victim and that she and her friends were out to destroy his life. I do not trust this guy, especially since this only happened a year ago. Not even his closest friends trust him. They said it themselves. I texted him, saying that he should not dare hurt her because I have the money to fly out and do the same. His friends screenshotted his response to me, which he shared in their group chat. He was saying things like, "Why does she care?" and "It's not her life." When I found out about their new relationship, I was not just disgusted at him, but also shocked for her. I guess it is partly my fault that she did not know the full story. My friend is a very gullible girl. She is too trusting and super vulnerable and will believe anything someone says in a heartbeat. I am very worried about her and scared that she will get manipulated out of her wits. When I found out they got together, I immediately texted my friend. We had a long conversation, and I told her to break up with him because it is unlikely he will change his ways. He still likes omitting parts of stories to keep himself in a good light, even lying about some stuff to his friends. She says she trusts him, but that is the thing I am most worried about. I talked about this to his 3 closest friends, the ones that do not trust him either. Although they do not want to be involved, which I understand, and will not involve them anymore, one of them said that maybe he did change, and we would never know if he did or not if we do not change our views on him. Am I the asshole? TL Dugder. My friend dates a super abusive and manipulative guy that lies to his friends, and I told her that she should probably break up with him. It's understandable to be concerned about a friend's well-being, especially when dating someone with such a troubling history. However, it's ultimately her decision to make, and no one can force her to see things differently. While it's important to voice concerns and be there for support, respecting her choice is crucial. Only time will tell if she made the right decision, and she may need you more than ever if things go south. Am I the jerk for wanting a timeline for when my sibling will leave my home? After staying with me while recuperating from major surgery, I am a 27-year-old female who currently lives at home with my single father, sharing expenses. My sister, who is a 29-year-old female, moved to a different state years ago, though she was welcome to continue living with us and did so during the COVID-19 pandemic. Both of us have struggled as adults with depression. My sister, I only found out within the past few years, has pretty severe depression, for which she sees a therapist. I went through a serious episode myself 7 years ago, and my sister was conspicuously unwilling to get involved or be a listening ear. Her room was turned into my home office after she went back home following COVID-19. I have my work set up in there with her help and blessing. My work requires specialized equipment and isn't just a matter of picking up and moving a laptop. Recently, she had serious craniofacial surgery and came home to stay with us while she recuperated. Her hospital and appointments are in her home city, which is several hours away. She had no plan other than relying on my father and me to drive her at whatever time the appointments were set, often requiring us to take off work. These appointments have been weekly for a month and a half now. She has also made it totally impossible for me to work in my home office since she is staying in there. I had less than a week's notice of the date of her procedure and that the room would be totally inaccessible to me to work in. She stays in the room practically 24/7, and we all had little to no information from her prior. I feel upset and frustrated at the lack of communication and consideration. She has also made some very troubling statements, indicating that she feels nothing matters and that life is only suffering and not worthwhile. I am extremely concerned for her, encouraging her to reconnect with her therapist remotely, who she has not been seeing since she was unable to speak for 2 weeks as a result of her surgery. At no point has she expressed gratitude for the time, inconvenience, and expense that my father and I have incurred. She seems to believe that as long as she doesn't ask for these things, no thanks are needed, but she has put herself in a position where she absolutely needs help. We are happy to provide it, I just wish there was some acknowledgement from her. Not being able to use my office has greatly impacted my ability to do my job, and has threatened the project I'm currently working on. Even now, a month and a half later, my sister has offered no timeline for when she may return to her home, though her doctors have indicated she should be fine to return to work and normal activities. I have been so upset about how depressed she seems that I haven't broached the subject with her beyond asking pointedly if I can move some of my office things out of the room, and mentioning that it's been challenging not to have access to the space. Am I the asshole? It's understandable that moving specialized equipment isn't as simple as relocating a laptop, but having several days' notice should have been enough time to make arrangements. If your sister isn't showing gratitude and hasn't provided a timeline, it's crucial to have a conversation and set clear expectations. Instead of assuming intentions, ask her directly about her plans and explain why it's important for your work setup. Remember, if the house is your father's, his say ultimately influences who can stay and under what conditions, but having open communication can help resolve the tension. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.